Welcome to the XP Team USA podcast. We're digging the plugs and pinpointing the topics you want to hear.
And now, here's your hosts, Dave Kimmel and Grant Hansen.
This show is brought to you by XP Metal Detectors. XP Metal Detectors is a high-end, innovative metal detector company with great machines and great pinpointers. For more information, go to xpmetaldetectors.com. For a dealer near you, try a Google search or go to xpdeus-usa.com. Hello and welcome to the XP Team USA podcast. I'm your host, Dave Kimmel, coming to you from Central Oklahoma, and I am joined today by my co-host, Grant Hansen, coming to you from New Jersey. How you doing, Grant?
I am doing well. We're more than halfway through February and gearing up toward March with hopefully some warmer temperatures, so I've been just biding my time, doing some research and getting ready for spring. How about yourself?
Yeah, same here, doing research, getting ready for spring. Been doing a lot of homework, been going back to school, so I'm really busy with that. But I'm trying to get out and do some hunting.
Yeah, I was going to go in my backyard the other day and plant some finds because my 7-year-old nephew has been showing an interest, so I want to invite him over, but I couldn't even get into the ground to plant some stuff. So as soon as it warms up a little bit, I'll put some shallow coins in there and some other stuff, and maybe I'll get a future detecting buddy out of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
so I really enjoyed the video you uploaded on the XP Team USA YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, thanks. It's a short clip of just over the summer when I found a vintage silver ring. So, I've been trying to record stuff as I get out there. So, if you've got some time, check it out. It's only a couple minutes. And I hope to come out with a bunch of just little shorts, interesting find here and there, just produce some good content and hopefully motivate people to get out.
Right. And the XP Team USA just released a video a little bit ago called Wisconsin Ice to California Desert, the XP Deus Wins. Check that out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, last show was really cool. I especially liked the segment with Todd Roy when he went exploring some old mines and the areas around that. Really well done and very interesting to watch.
Right. Yeah. That guy cracks me up.
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
And Gary Blackwell has also released a new video about the ORX in Skill School, and that's pretty good too.
Yeah, just log on to YouTube and search for XP Skills School. It's a really good demo on the ORX showing how targets sound differently depending on the different settings you're using. So I think people will enjoy that.
So lately I've seen a couple of people get on our Facebook group and ask how they can get an XP Team USA hat or a t-shirt. As many of you know, we do not sell the hats or t-shirts, but you can win them. And our last couple of podcasts, Dave D has taken it upon himself to go on and chat and ask questions about the podcast, and the first people who answer them questions have been winning hats and t-shirts and other gear. So if you want a chance to win a hat or a t-shirt or some other gear, then follow us on the chat when the show first airs every other Friday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. And you may just see Dave D on there giving away hats and t-shirts and other gear.
Yeah, it's a really good opportunity, and make sure you pay attention to what we're saying because Dave will throw out some good questions, and the first person usually who comes up with the right answer gets the prize.
We had Ohio Relic Hunter last time. He won both t-shirt and hat.
It pays to pay attention, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
And to be fast. Yeah, and speaking of giveaways, we still have our MI6 pinpointer giveaway. For information on that, go to our Facebook group, XP Team USA. It's the pinned post. Entering is pretty simple. Just write a short article about a great find. The MI6 can be used with any metal detector, but if you've got an ORX or a Deus, you can pair it and hear it through your headphone.
Right. Great contest. All right. Today's show, we got Josh Kimmel from Beyond Sight and Sound podcast, and we also have Larry Hockman. Larry Hockman is a wealth of information when it comes to Civil War relics and buttons.
Yeah, I'm very interested to speak with both these guys. Josh and I go back a number of years. We did a podcast one night together, and then I was on his podcast a couple of weeks ago. And then Larry, he's just such a wealth of information, and he's ID'd so many great things for me and many others. So it'll be great to learn from him.
All right, well, let's get to the show, and we'll be back with Josh Kimmel.
All right.
XP Metal Detectors now introduces the new X35 search coils. Designed around a brand new electronic advances, these new high-performance and versatile coils will allow you to choose from a wide range of frequencies, ranging from 3.7 kHz to 27.7 kHz. In total, there are 35 available frequencies based around 5 main frequencies that are quickly accessible. A new boost mode is now an option on frequencies 3.7 kHz to 4.4 kHz and can significantly increase detection depth on highly conductive targets such as large masses and large silver coins. The new X35 search coils will now be available as option as the same price as the previous coils, and also now will be standard with the brand new diodes. So get your X35 today. We'd like to welcome Josh Kimmel to our show. Josh is an XP Team USA field rep from Ohio and a host of Beyond Sight and Sound podcast. Welcome to our show, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yes, and welcome again. And here we are again. 6 years ago, I think, or so, we did a podcast together and then took that time off. And then you were gracious enough to have me on your show a couple of weeks ago. And now you're on the XP Team USA show. So thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And yeah, I mean, we keep kind of running into each other, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So what motivated you to get started with Beyond Sight and Sound podcast?
Well, what motivated me to get started with the podcast was the fact that people didn't really realize that I've spent the duration of my time in the hobby literally as your blind hunter. I suffered some traumatic injuries to my vision when I was a teenager, and that left me statutory or clinically blind. And I never really said anything to anybody about it. And I thought, my disability isn't a disability in the traditional sense. It's more of an ability to help inspire others to get involved in the hobby, help educate others, and get people off the couch and get them outdoors. And you could say that's how the show came to be, because I wanted to share my experiences and information with people, as well as other people's information. And in the end, we all learn. We all become more successful hunters in the field that way because we learn from one another. Everybody brings something to the table.
Yeah, and with so many years under your belt doing the podcast and so many variety of different guests, what are some of those key things that you've learned because you are hosting that show?
Always be prepared. If you're going to be a successful hunter in the field, you have to learn to be versatile. Make the situation work for you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about your hometown and Mercer County, Ohio, and what kind of metal detecting does it offer for you?
Well, I've got quite a unique area of history around me, I guess. Most people would say there's always these cool places you want to go and dig and stuff like that, but there's no place like home for many of us. And my area, I actually live in the county seat of Mercer County. It's Salina, Ohio. I'm a few blocks off of the shores of Grand Lake St. Mary's, which was at one point the largest man-made reservoir. It was hand dug by German and Irish settlers to be a feeder system for the Miami-Erie Canal. And that was hand dug from 1837 to 1845. And they were paid 30 cents a day and a jigger of whiskey for back-breaking labor. How's that for inflation?
Wow. I mean, I know how hard it is sometimes digging a 6-inch or 8-inch plug, trying to get through rocks and roots and stuff. I can't imagine hand digging out a reservoir.
Yeah, it was a swampy area, and I believe the reservoir encompassed something like 13 million cubic feet of water. It's 9 miles long, 3 miles wide, and we're talking about approximately 37 running miles of shoreline.
Wow, that's crazy. And when you think about 30 cents a day, it kind of like when you find a barber quarter or a seated quarter, like, hey, that's somebody's day's wages right there, right? It puts it in perspective.
It really does. I mean, I'm just absolutely floored if I can run across a seated quarter or something like that, because you figured that was almost an entire day wage for one of these settlers that were helping to hand dig the reservoir. It was also one of the first instances of offshore oil drilling. At one point, there were over 150 derricks out there. there. And back in the day, it has also hosted 2 amusement parks. So there's all sorts of things to be found over here.
Mm-hmm. So you've been detecting now for 25 years or so. What changes in the hobby have you seen, whether it's equipment related or it's increased popularity?
I've definitely seen an increased popularity, which I'm sure you guys have as well. The TV shows, the radio shows have played a major role in the popularity, as well as the social media, because we're all sharing the things that we find, our videos, and that's encouraging others to get into the hobby. Not only that, though, just the advances in technology. The machines are so much lighter, so much faster, much more powerful, better discrimination, and I've been in it for 25 plus years, so I can remember the days when we didn't have pinpointers. When pinpointers come along, that was a game changer. It sped up recovery time so much.
Oh, yeah.
Really spoiled us.
So for the past couple of years, you've been using the Deus. What motivated you to use the Deus? And do you use the full tones?
I do use the full tones. I use primarily full tone or pitch. I don't like to use just 3 or 4 tones or even 5 tones. I like all the audio information I can get, because with being legally blind, I'm primarily a tone hunter to begin with. You can get much more information out of your audio than you can out of your screen to begin with. Anyhow, audio always wins over VDI.
Right.
The screen is a nice second or third reference, but audio is always the first indicator.
Do you feel that not having that quick ability to reference a screen makes you even more in tune with the tones, just because that's so primary for you, right?
Right. Yeah. Because for me to use, don't get me wrong, the screen's nice. I like the clarity of the display on the dais and everything, and the fact that it's backlit gives a nice contrast, so it's easier for me to see. But it's an extra added step. I hate to say it's a hassle, but it takes me a little longer if I'm trying to see what the screen is saying as well. So a lot of times when I'm running the dais, I use the wrist mount configuration. I don't even have the remote on the machine. I just wear it on my wrist. That way I can hold it up and see what the screen is doing. But primarily, like I said, I'm always listening for the audio.
So you've recently been diagnosed with a very advanced case of primary progressive multiple sclerosis. How have you been doing with your treatments?
Well, that's actually what brought me to Deus to begin with. I needed to go lightweight, and I couldn't wait. I needed to go lightweight like yesterday. So I went to Deus, and at that point, I had already lost the feeling in my left hand and forearm, was already losing the ability to walk, and around the time of diagnosis, I couldn't even hardly open a bottle of water without assistance. So the treatments are very, very expensive and very heavy-hitting medications. It's a disease modifier that is designed to slow the progression down, and basically what they've been doing for the last 2 years is just trying to get me to stabilize, so I'm not continually going downhill like I was. And so far, the treatments do seem to be helping. I don't think they're doing as much as they had hoped, but I am at least able to walk, and right now, they are what is keeping me out there in the field, because I refuse to give up. I refuse to quit. I'm going to dig just as long as I can, and if those treatments are what's enabling me to do that, well, then that's kind of what we have to do. We all have our cross to bear.
Yeah, I'm glad it's working out, and hopefully it'll continue to get even better. You know, technologies and advances happen all the time. You know, detecting we hear a lot for others, for myself, as a form of therapy. Do you find it as a form of therapy for yourself in dealing with MS?
Absolutely. Actually, it's always been kind of therapeutic for me, like it has for you guys too, I'm sure. You know, you get out there and you can just de-stress, you can relax and enjoy yourself. But for me, it's it's even more so now, because when I'm out there detecting, not only am I able to still de-stress, but I'm using that as physical therapy as well, because it's forcing me to get out there and walk and get down and get up and all of that. So it's really become more of a therapy thing for me in the last 2 years than it ever was.
Yeah, you mentioned the physicality of it. I think a lot of people in their minds have visions of metal detectorists as a guy in white socks and sandals on the beach digging easy holes, but it really is a physical hobby.
Absolutely it is, and each environment has its own hazards, you could say. I mean, the parks are fine and all, but the beaches, sometimes that's a little different physical workout. And then when you get into the water hunting, because I do water hunting as well, then you're into a whole different realm. Freshwater is completely different from saltwater. You've got to watch the tides. You've got to watch the waves. You've got to watch, there's going to be low spots and dips that you're not going to be able to see because they are under the water. So it can be a little bit of a game changer and very, very physical.
So you got another hobby as a form of therapy is working with paracord. I've seen some of the bracelets and stuff that you've done before. Have you ever made any lanyards for pinpointers?
I have not. I've played around with the idea. I've had a couple of people mention it in passing that that could be something unique out there. And I have given it some thought, but I haven't really went that far yet. I guess I will have to take that step and play around with that a little bit. Of course, you mentioned you see some of the bracelets and stuff. I didn't realize anybody even paid attention to those posts.
Yeah, you had a fundraiser thing for the bracelets, didn't you? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I did, and that still actually stands. A good friend of mine out in Illinois had been diagnosed last year with a form of lymphoma, and me and my wife got to talking and thought, hey, well, couldn't we do something about that? So I did up these just kind of elastic, buckleless, more like a sports style kind of paracord bracelet. You slip it over your wrist, and did it in the color of green for lymphoma. And we were selling these off to anybody that wanted one, as long as they would cover the cost. We'd get it mailed out to them, and every bit of the proceeds of that was considered profit, I was able to set aside and send out to him in a check to help him out when they were in a time of need. And I told him that I would let that continue to stand. I'll leave those photos up. If anybody wants one, I've got no problem getting one out to them, and the money goes on to him.
Yeah, so if anybody wants any bracelets, definitely get a hold of Josh Kimmel.
Well, thank you.
So, Josh, you just mentioned your wife. This makes me a little jealous, but she's starting to get into detecting now, as well as your grandkids, nieces, and nephews?
Yeah. It only took about 12 years or so. No, actually, I think a lot of it was she knows that detecting is a big part of what I do. And once I was diagnosed with the MS, up to that point, I had always been more or less a solo hunter. And might not be such a grand idea to be a solo hunter now. It's a little better to hunt with a friend, just in case. You never know what's going to happen. And she started to encourage me to, hey, you need to get out there and do some digging. You need your therapy. And she started coming along too. Sometimes she would come along and just take pictures, and then she started carrying a detector and making her own finds, and she's doing very well for herself, actually. Last year she was very excited to have found her first ring and a number of other items as well, where it's been very interesting for me, because when I get to see her or even some of the grandkids or nieces or nephews make their first finds and the excitement they have, I can kind of relive and say, hey, yeah, I remember when I found my first of that particular item.
Yeah, that's great. And I know what you mean about just that sense of security of having a buddy out there with you or someone there. I mean, I've been in situations where, England is a good example, where I'm just out on this vast field all by myself. I'm in a foreign country. There's no cell service. And if something happens to me, that's it. I'm done. So I think in certain situations, having someone to go out with you is a really good idea.
Yeah, you never know. Some of these fields and pastures that we're in, there's groundhogs or gophers, if you don't see the hole and you step in it, that could be an ankle breaker for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And with some of the meds that they have me on, especially in the summertime, I kind of run the risk of dehydrating rather quickly. So we try to make sure and stay hydrated, or at least there's somebody there that can grab a bottle of water for me or something.
So what's your favorite all-time find?
Oh, a lot of times my memorable finds are actually the rings and things that I'm able to recover and return to people, because you can't put a price on handing somebody a piece of their life back. When you see the impact that has, when you're able to show them that item that they've given up hope for or thought they would never see again, it's really a great experience. Whether that's me returning it or even helping someone else to return one that they've found. One of them that I've done, I believe I think she said she had lost it 32 years before I found it. And I was able to track her down, return it to her within 2 weeks of recovering the ring. She hadn't contacted me about it. I was out on a random hunt and found it. Another one, when that was in the paper, someone had contacted me wanting to know if maybe I could help locate their son's class ring that had been missing for 6 years. And I went out that year. I recovered it on the afternoon of Father's Day, turned it back over to the family that afternoon, and they kept it a complete and total secret from her son, wrapped it up and gave it back to him as a Christmas gift and recorded it so I could see the reaction.
That's pretty cool.
That's really cool. And it really gives us detectorists a good name. I think, there's some people who think that, we're finders keepers and just out for treasure. And if that were the case, we would probably find a better paying, monetarily paying hobby. So it's really good to hear, the jewelry return. That really puts us in a good light. But I mean, it just really feels good.
Right. And let's face it, with the hobby and the things that we do, we need all the good publicity we can get.
Mm-hmm. You recently just wrote a blog about one of your ring recoveries on the XP Team USA website. So if anybody wants to check that out, go on there and read that. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that one was a 14-karat white gold wedding band. I didn't even have the dais on for 5 minutes before I found it for the guy. He was so happy.
Wow, that's great.
I did one not too long ago on the OU campus over here, and some girl called, got my number because I'm a president of the club over here. I went up there and got permission to get on campus and go look for it. I was out there for a while, and I was about to give up. It was the very last patch right before I was about to quit. I found it, and I just picked it up. I didn't say anything to her. I just kind of walked over to her, and I told her, well, I guess that's it. I'm ready to go. And she had this real let down look, and I said, and I just handed it over to her, and she started crying and everything. It was,
oh, that's sweet.
That's awesome. And when I get those calls, the pressure's kind of on at that point, because sometimes it goes quick, sometimes you have to make a few attempts, and maybe you don't find it at all. And when I'm not able to recover it, I feel so sorry for those people. It's like a big disappointment. You let them down, but they know you gave it your full effort and did everything that you could to get it back for them.
Yeah, my neighbor lost his wedding ring in a bush when he was putting up his Halloween decorations. And, I was the first person he called, and I went over there. I just couldn't find the thing. And I came back, and I felt so defeated that I was like, I can't give up on this. So I went back the next day, and I'm inside this, giant stickly bush, but I've got on my hands and knees with my pinpointer, and I found it. So I wasn't going to give up until I found it for him.
Good job. Way to stay determined there.
Right,
Sometimes that's what it takes. I mean, when they lose it in a yard, when they lose it in their own yard, that's a lot easier to deal with. But when they lose it in a public area like a beach where there's no vantage point for where they actually lost it, they may have you in the spot, they may not. And a lot of how successful we are is based on how well they can put us in the spot or the information that they can give us. So you have to be able to ask the right questions and know if it's even worth making an attempt.
Yeah, that's a great point. So within your 25 years plus of detecting, I'm sure you found some really great things. What's number one on your bucket list? What haven't you found yet that you really want to find?
Well, I'm sure we all would love to find that elusive gold coin.
Mm-hmm.
But I would really, I mean, it changes from time to time, but I think I would still just love to see a real in my display.
Well, come out to New Jersey. We'll get you on some colonial era farm fields, and I've only found 4 but in my time, but they're out there. They come up around here.
Oh, I know they're out there, and we do find them in Ohio too. As a matter of fact, I know of 3 8 reals that have come out of the ground not far from me. So I know that there's got to be one out there somewhere with my name on it too. I haven't got my coil over it yet.
Exactly.
So now, if you were given a 1-day pass to hunt anywhere that's been off limits for metal detecting, where would you go?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, I like sticking around local history and everything like that. But I don't know. Maybe White Sands.
Interesting.
Victoria Peak.
What would
that
you
might
hope to
be something different to try.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was great having you on here, and we'd love to have you back again sometime. And if anybody wants to hear more of Josh, check out Beyond Sight and Sound with Josh Kimmel.
Yep, it airs every Wednesday and Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. It's at Spreaker. You can just search Beyond Sight and Sound podcast, and it's the first Google return you get.
Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate it. And we try to likewise reciprocate and make sure we've got links for XP Team USA in every episode we put out there.
Thanks. We appreciate that. And I will say, if you guys like to live chat while you're listening to a podcast, Beyond Sight and Sound is very, very active in the chat box. So definitely check it out if you haven't already.
Yes.
Yes, they are. They get a little on the wild side.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, guys.
Check us out online at xpdeus-usa.com. This segment is brought to you by Omega Mill Pouches, the official digging pouch of XP Team USA. If you're looking for a rugged, hunt-tested, washable pouch, look no further than Omega Mill. Get on eBay and search Omega Mill Pouches. That's OMEGAMILL.
We'd like to welcome Larry Hockman to our show. I'm sure most of our listeners know Larry for his expertise on relics and passion for his history and metal detecting. Welcome to the show, Larry.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. For our listeners who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself so that we can learn more about who you are?
Well, I started detecting in '69 when I was 15. I've been pretty much interested in the Civil War all my life. I still have a book that I got on the Civil War when I was in first grade, and my brothers and I used to roam the fields and woods looking for bottles and arrowheads. And in 68 or early 69, we were helping a guy on a farm, and he showed us some rock foundations that were slave cabins, and we went there and dug those out. And then later in 69, my dad got a kit and put together a metal detector kit and put it together for me, and that was when I started detecting. And then in 1970, the summer of 1970, I worked with my dad over the summer and got the money to buy me a Metro Tech, and I've just been at it ever since.
Do you have any kids that are interested in metal detecting and history?
I have 2 sons and a daughter, but my daughter used to detect with me until she was about 13, and none of them are really interested in it now.
Gotcha. Well, at least it's one of those hobbies there. You don't need a team or people around you. It's nice to get out
right,
solo. Yeah.
Exactly.
And as a profession, you work as a heavy equipment operator. Does working on large properties like that help you get any permissions?
Sometimes, yeah, it does. We've been on a lot of jobs. Well, I work for a smaller company now, but we've been on a lot of jobs where there were big bottle dumps and camps, and I've dug some cool stuff on some of the sites. One of the sites we were doing years ago in Dumfries was an old house site, and I dug a Texas buckle at the old house site, which is a pretty rare buckle. And I found a Georgia Military Institute staff button, and again, that's a rare button. I found that on a job site we were on. And one job site we were doing in D.C., I found 140-some bottles that dated from the 1840s to about 1900.
Wow.
So it pans out sometimes. It works out for for me sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds great. And you mentioned that you got your first book on the Civil War. I think it was in the first grade. And you're extremely knowledgeable. I remember when I found my New Jersey staff buttons, Union buttons, you were the first and the quickest to identify it. How did you become, other than just having an interest in the Civil War, how did you become such an expert on identifying these relics?
I guess I've just been blessed with a good memory on that stuff. And then like as far as how I can ID a lot of stuff, I compare it just compares things from different time periods, like stuff from colonial time periods usually made a little bit different from stuff from about the mid 1800s, and the stuff from the mid 1800s is a little bit different from the late 1800s into the 1900s. And say buttons, your staff type military buttons, they started making those about the late 1830s, and from the 1830s to sometime in the 1860s, they were almost perfectly round, and sometime around 1870 or so, they started flattening the top a little bit. And so that's a good indication. If you got a staff button that's got flattened, the top's not quite as round as some of the other ones, and that's a good indication it's a post-war button. And the same thing with the rims. They started using the wider rims. Now, there are exceptions. That D. Evans, he's an exception to a lot of things, but they started using the wider rims about 1864. So if you see a button with a wide rim, usually it dates 1864 or later.
That's a good way to indicate it, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes the face is actually a better way to judge the age than the back mark, because some of the back marks can go for a good many years, while the style of the face has changed over the years. So sometimes you got to use both to date a button, and sometimes the face is actually a little better than the back mark.
Back in the day, you participated in Civil War reenactments. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like and how that connected you better with our nation's history?
It was just, I don't know, it was something I was interested in, and we went to the 125th Manassas reenactment, and we went to church service, and there was a fellow named Alan Farley that had just started a ministry called RMJC, Reenactors Missions for Jesus Christ, and we just felt then like we were supposed to join up with him, and so we did, and then we started doing reenactments. So we did them for a good many years. I can't remember exactly how many. I'm gonna guess close to 20. And my kids had a band, and they were doing 45 bookings or so a year and a festival every year. And we just, had to give something up. We felt like we were supposed to give the reenactments up to keep the band going, and that kind of fell apart a few years ago. But that's the way it goes. But the reenactments, they were just, they were a lot of fun, and got to meet a lot of people. And again, I got to get on some sites to dig, and so it was just really interesting. And one thing about that, sometimes you could be on the line or in the camp, and you could almost slip back like you were actually in that time, and might just be for a few seconds, but it was just like something that happened, and it was just like you were back then for a little bit. Kind of cool.
Yeah. And does being a Civil War reenactor, does that help you identify some of the items now that you see on Facebook and other places? No,
not really. I think I helped some of those guys out because some of the stuff you saw at the reenactments wasn't quite right, and I mean, some of it's just nitpicking stuff, but like I saw one guy that had Great Seal buttons on his coat, and they didn't start using those till 1902. The kind he had were made after 1910. And so they have some of the, unless they've changed, I haven't done any in years, but some of them used to be pretty picky about the uniforms and everything had to be correct. But I don't think it really helped me a whole lot to learn anything.
That's interesting. I'm sure they were very happy for your expertise there. You're from Virginia, which is, I always say it's a wonderful state to be from. from if you like metal detecting and history. Do you focus your detecting just on your home state, or do you go elsewhere to hunt?
I usually just stay close to home now, but I have hunted in Tennessee, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Kentucky. I think that's it.
So what kind of detecting do you prefer? Do you like farm fields or home sites?
Well, I'd rather be back in the woods because the stuff usually comes out the woods nicer and the ground's usually a little better as far as the soil being more steady to detect in, where in the field it's lots of times been turned over and it has a lot of fields seem to have more mineralization in them in the woods. But I used to just mainly hunt for Civil War relics. A lot of us years ago wouldn't even hunt a house site because there's too much trash and we had too many places to go. But looking back, I think we need our butts kicked because I found some of my best stuff in house sites in the past, I'm going to say the past 20 years. And usually the trashier the house site anymore, the more I like it.
Yeah, I like house sites myself too, just because I feel like I can exhaust it. Where if I'm on a giant farm field, it's a little daunting. Like there's no way I'm going to get every inch of that field.
Right. And no place is ever hunted out. There's one field near me. It's a camp, and they were there at least a few years. I think it might have been a supply depot from the stuff we found. But there was stuff I started hunting in 1970, and the ground in there is terrible, but you can still go in and find a few bullets and an eagle button here and there. But the camp was cool. It seemed like everything was burnt. We found gun part and stuff that had been burnt and had never rusted because the heat tempered them. And I mean, I remember digging 4 or 5 lock plates in one day in there. But the ground was so bad, even a belt plate like an inch or two deep would read like iron. It'll fool you because you don't have to readjust your machine in there very much, but it's just the machines don't want to work right in there.
That's very interesting. So when you're deciding on where you want to go detecting, what kind of research do you do and how do you gain permission?
Well, here lately, I've just been hitting pieces of woods and walking properties, and usually I just go up and ask, and if they say no, no, and if they say fine, yeah, it's okay, it's fine. But I just look for a spot that I like, say it looks like a good spot and hit it, Like one piece of woods I was hunting, I had no idea if there was anything in there. It's a couple of years ago, and I saw a big cedar tree that didn't fit in with everything. Well, I just walked over and it was an old house site, and it'd been dug some, but not much. And it just, like if I'm walking, I look for things that don't fit in, trees or vegetation that don't fit in. Usually that's a sign of a house site or something went on there.
We're going to be right back with Larry Hockman. XP has introduced its new ORX machine, a high-end machine at a mid-range price. The ORX has 4 factory preset programs, 2 gold, 2 coins, also 2 user programs. The ORX comes with a high-frequency coil and is compatible with the X35 coils. The ORX is now available in the USA. We're back with Larry Hockman from Virginia. So let's talk about some of your more notable finds. Tell us about the first time you found that southern belt buckle.
Oh, gosh. I guess it was about 98, late 90s, somewhere in there. I found a house site in the summer, and it was grown up, and I hunted in there, and I guess we're talking first mark Confederate plate here because I found a few clip corners and Georgia frames and stuff. But I got in this house site, and I found a Georgia frame buckle and a real early Navy button, and the place so grown up I couldn't really hunt it, so I decided to go back in the winter. I went back in the winter time, and I hunted in there, and it was a lot of iron. It was a really trashy site, and I found a couple of flat buttons. I was about ready to leave, and I got a halfway decent signal. I dug it in a saber belt plate, and then I slowed down, decided to hunt in that area, and a couple minutes later I found an eagle breastplate, and then just a couple minutes after that I found a Louisiana buckle. And so I tried hunting, but I had to keep taking that Louisiana buckle out and look at it. And I finally called a friend that had a relic shop, and I said, "You still at shop?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Stay there, just stay there." So I had to show somebody. So I wasn't good the rest of the day. But that turned out to be a really good spot. I got those plate, a BMM buckle, U.S. buckle out of there, a bunch of colonial coins, about every type of button you could think of, but you just had to pick through the iron because the ground wasn't real bad, but wasn't real good, and there was a lot of iron in there to pick through.
Wow. And do you know, was it the site of a battle, a skirmish, or was it a campsite? And do you know anything about it?
It was a house site that was there. The house was there in the 1700s, and I don't think it was there after the war. I think from what I could find, I think it probably got burnt down during the Civil War or just after. There was a skirmish skirmish nearby, and from the amount of different types of buttons and the different plates that were found, I think it might have been used as a hospital. And one thing that makes me think that is I did not find a whole lot of bullets in there, but there were a lot of butts. And just it's odd to find more buttons than bullets. And then there was a wide variety of buttons, all types of eagle letters, New York, South Carolina, Virginia, Georgia, I think of North Carolina, staff buttons, just a mixed bunch of buttons coming out of there.
It certainly sounds like a great site.
It was. It's going now. They've cleared it and it's gone now, but it was a really good spot.
And you've also found, and I didn't even know these things existed, experimental exploding bullets. Can you tell us what those are? Did you know what they were when you found them? And what was that like?
I'd seen pictures of them, and we always thought they were late war bullets. So I dug one, and I had to look at it. I was hunting a 1861 Georgia camp, and I'd been digging carcanos, and I dug one of the exploding bullets, and I sat there and looked at it. I mean, I knew what it was, but it took a while to sink in because I'd only ever seen pictures of them. And they're a 69 caliber, and the head looks like a shotgun slug with a nail through it, and the base was a lead cylinder and had a percussion cap inside, and it was filled with gunpowder, and when the head hit something, it was supposed to drive the nail back into the percussion cap and cause a spark. And I found 3 complete ones up there, and just the head to one, and then a friend of mine found a complete one up there.
Wow, that sounds really, really cool.
So I always like finding personal items, and you found a personal item, a silver ID shield from the 6th Wisconsin. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was hunting a job site in Manassas where they were clearing, and we dug a lot of bullets and a few eagle buttons, mostly bullets. I hadn't found any plates in there, and I was using a Fisher 440, which was it was a bad ground machine, but didn't discriminate, and I was picking through a bunch of beer cans and stuff, and I only dug 2 relics that day, but I dug an OVM buckle, a Ohio Volunteer Militia buckle, and there was a well, and they had pushed the dirt up to the well, but not in it, and right up on the edge of that dirt, I got a signal. I pulled up a silver ID shield, and the first thing I saw was Iron Brigade, War 1861. And the Iron Brigade was, I can't remember the exact regiments, but they were several regiments from Wisconsin, Indiana, and Michigan. And the pin I dug, the guy was a sergeant with the Company C of the 6th Wisconsin, Richard Corcoran. And he was wounded at South Mountain, I think.
Wow.
That is really cool.
Yeah, if they'd have pushed that dirt like 2 more feet, that thing would have been down in the well.
Yeah, you got lucky. Sometimes when ground's disturbed, it helps you out, actually.
Right, it does.
So with all these great finds in your bag, what's the top of your bucket list right now? What haven't you found that you really want to?
Oh, I was born in Gettysburg, so I'd like to find a Pennsylvania buckle. I know the chances of that's next to none. And I've never found a Pennsylvania button either. I've been around where they've been dug, but I've never found one. So either one of those 2 would be good.
All right. Do you have any hobbies outside of detecting?
Not really anymore. I used to, but that's about all I do between that work and piddling around the house. That's about it.
Sounds like enough to me.
Yeah.
All right. So now I have to ask you about your Facebook profile picture, because this is how most people identify you with on the different groups. Is that your hand with a wound, and did you draw a face on it? What's that all about?
Yeah, I was running a hoe ram, and it's a backhoe with like a jackhammer on it, and the hammer pin broke. And it probably weighed about 80 pounds, and I threw it up in the cab of the machine, and it was fairly new, had a big air bubble in it, so that's why it broke. So when the mechanic came, I went to pull it out of the hoe, and the sharp end came down and laid the skin on my hand back. So that was about 2 weeks before I did the picture, but I was working on another backhoe, and I slammed my hand down on the impact to go down socket, and I busted that open again. So I'm sitting in my truck doing my paperwork, and I just drew 2 eyes and nose on it, so I started messing with people. So somebody said they wanted to see it, so I scanned it and sent them a picture of it, and I said, call it Carl the Cut. So that I decided to make it my profile picture on Facebook. So it's been right there for a while.
Carl the Cut. I like that.
Yeah. I've added a few more, like I forget Slice the Cut, and I've had several members of the Cut family. It's just something ignorant to do.
So do you participate in any of the group hunts around in Virginia?
I've been to a few, but not many. There was a hunt years ago called the Legends of Relic Hunting Invitational. I was at that. There was a couple, was it King Queen hunt in down around Suffolk, Virginia. Then I've been to a couple others down that way, and then I've been to a few other ones. I can't remember which ones. But then there's a cedar hunt that me and my buddy usually do every year. We're not going to be able to do this year. It's at Virginia Beach, and I can't even, Tidewater Relic and Coin Club or something like that. I can't even remember the exact name of the club. I'm sorry, but they put it on. It's always a lot of fun. They bury coins and tokens and different things on the beach, and they have 3 different hunts during the day. And me and my buddy have been going down there for a good many years, and we always have a lot of fun doing that.
Those are always fun to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Back where we were talking about job sites and all, I just forgot about, I'd like to mention if I can, there's a little battlefield in Middleburg, Virginia, belongs to Northern Virginia Park Authority, and we put a roadway and some parking area in there. And they didn't have archaeologists up there. The lady who was in charge of the park was kind of upset because they said it wasn't in the budget and this and that. So I had found some Civil War glass and some odd and iron, and I told her, I said, I don't know if you're interested, but I found some Civil War period glass and some iron down there. I laid it down there by the well. And she said, how do you know it's Civil War? I said, I've been metal detecting almost 50 years, and I know stuff pretty well. So she said, okay, well, I'll go look at it. So she looked at it and thanked me, and so I said, I'm surprised y'all don't have an archaeologist up here. And she said it wasn't within the budget and this and that, and she was kind of upset about it. And I said, well, I think I know what the answer is going to be, but would it be okay if a buddy and I come up here and hunt the land that we're moving? And she said, well, you can, but you'll have to give everything to the park. So I said, yeah, we'll do that. She said, you would do that? And I said, yeah, just to see what we find. So we went up there, and I found a lock plate, the bottom to a dyer shell, another shell fragment, and some bullets, and eagle button. Dean found some bullets and a few things, so we gave them to her, and she was really happy and says, you know what, y'all hunt up here anytime you want. You got full access to the property. We have to give everything to the park. So probably the best things we found, I got a breech block to a Burnside's carbine and about half a Schinkel shell and about half of a sword blade. But we dug a good many bullets and flat buttons and things like that. Nothing real great, but those 3 finds were probably the best. And I mean, it was cool to hunt that place, even though it had been dug before, because the park had only owned it like 3 years. And I mean, I'm sure there's still stuff there. There's a lot of iron. There's a couple old houses built back in the 1700s, early 1800s, and a blacksmith shop and things like that there. But it was just cool to be able to hunt it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like a great site and a great permission. I mean, you did the right thing. You were honest about it.
Right.
And it seems like they rewarded you back.
Right.
Well, I think we could talk to you all night and for days about your finds and everything, but we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us tonight. Really enjoyed listening to your stories and learning from you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate y'all having me. And, I don't know. I don't think it's a whole lot special or anything, but I don't know, man.
Wow.
Just,
well, we would love to have you back again sometime. We enjoy talking to
okay,
you.
well, yeah, anytime.
You have really cool stories to tell. And
just tell everybody I'm old and been doing it too long.
Well, thanks again, Larry. We really appreciated talking to you.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you all.
If you have a question for one of our guests or just like to make a comment, call us at our XP Team USA podcast hotline at 405-294-3602. If you are in the market for a new pinpointer, then check out XP's MI6 pinpointer. Waterproof up to 6 meters, 2 audio modes, picture pulse, 3 levels of sensitivity, rechargeable lithium battery, 7 programs to choose from, 7th program being connectivity to your machine, allowing 50 levels of sensitivity and recovery mode for your MI6. For those on a budget, check out the MI4 pinpointer with all the same options except for connectivity. So find an MI6 or an MI4 pinpointer through a dealer near you.
This is Express News with Dave D.
Lake George, New York. Skeletal remains of as many as 11 people believed to have died during the Revolutionary War have been uncovered at a construction site in upstate New York. 11 unmarked graves have been found so far in an empty lot in the Adirondack village of Lake George. 2 uniform buttons found at the site indicate that at least one grave may have been that of a Pennsylvania soldier. Local archaeologist David Starbuck was called in by police after a construction crew used a backhoe to excavate a basement for a future apartment complex. Work was halted at the site, and state archaeologists arrived to gather all the bones, which were later taken to the New York State Museum in Albany. Insignias on the buttons indicated they came from the uniform of a soldier in the 1st Pennsylvania Battalion. The battalion was part of the Continental Army that invaded Canada in 1776, a year after the war started. During the fighting in Quebec, smallpox broke out among the American troops. Sickened soldiers were sent to Lake George to recuperate in hospitals whose locations remain a mystery. Discovering human remains and artifacts dating to that era isn't uncommon in Lake George. A popular summertime tourist destination since the late 19th century, the area saw heavy military activity a century earlier during the French and Indian War and the American Revolution. Update. The property owners plan to work with local officials and historical organizations to ensure the remains receive proper reburial. Still contemplating updating your XP Deus to 5.2? Well, if you're riding with the Deus Lite, it would be in your best interest to do so. The update will give you access to more expert features like reactivity, auto ground tracking, frequency offset, iron volume, and audio response. If you would like to know how to access these additional features from your WS4 or WS5 headphones, check out my latest video on the XP Team USA YouTube channel. You have been listening to Express News. I'm Dave D. Now back to the show with hosts David Kimmel and Grant Hansen.
All right, well, that was Express News now with Dave D.
Yeah, that was really cool. I especially enjoyed the piece he did with the old skeletons being dug up in Lake George. That's very interesting.
Yeah, right. That is interesting. Yeah, well, I hope everybody enjoyed our show, and our next show will be on March 8th.
Yeah, be sure to tune in. We'll have some great guests for that show. And as a reminder, again, the MI6 pinpointer giveaway is still going on through the 28th. So if you haven't already, make sure you get your entrance in.
Yeah, and stay tuned. We might be doing another giveaway on the next show.
You never know.
We'll see y'all then.
Take care, everybody.
Get that permission, put the coil to the soil, and we'll see you next time right here on the XP Team USA podcast.